It's not the numbers, it is who follows your content and what they accomplish. Good afternoon. I'd like to thank you for joining us here at the 2022 AmmCon, the Alternative Media Convention for Second Amendment Advocates. AmmCon is hosted in conjunction each year with the Gun Rights Policy Conference. Thank you for the invitation to offer some perspective today on evaluating our reach, our responsibilities, and our value as individual Second Amendment advocates in 2022. That's not necessarily the easiest thing to accomplish, so I'd like to offer my 2 cents to make that a little easier potentially. So we're having this conversation today in 2022. Now, just 5 years ago, all this information would not have applied. The industry was different, our laws were much different, the makeup of our gun community was different, the attacks on our rights were different. The technology of the internet, the capability and capacity of our audiences, other activists, and ourselves have all evolved dramatically over the last few years. With that in mind, we should realize that everything we do today, all the tactics and strategies that we come up with, should be able to adapt to a dramatically different environment tomorrow as well. Just a note here, this presentation is prepared for Second Amendment activists, not for other roles in the firearms industry, and definitely not for other content creators in general. This will apply to Second Amendment advocates specifically. So our focus today is in this presentation is the individual Second Amendment activist. So who is a Second Amendment activist exactly? I'm going to ask you to please ask yourself if you have a position or a point of view on what our Second Amendment protects. If you do, then I suggest you may already be a Second Amendment activist. Having an opinion on the Second Amendment sets you into a smaller group of our generation, of our population at large. Then you observe information and you evaluate that info. People may be looking to you for an opinion, which makes you, me, and every one of us ambassadors, examples, educators, and references for our Second Amendment, what it protects, firearms, gun laws, and lots more. Ask yourself, would a friend, coworker, teammate, or family member ask me a question about a gun? Would I be the expert in their eyes? Then our interest, our disinterest, our focus, our awareness are all seen, they're all registered with these people that we know in general. Now ask yourself, when you hang out with other gun people, either online or in real life at the range, does the same stuff still apply? Our interest, our disinterest, our focus and awareness, that's absorbed by our friends, even when we're at the range or the golf course or the movie theater or just out to eat. We have an opportunity to actively participate as an informed friend, family member, or even just some polite stranger with an insight at the range or gun shop or a gun show, somewhere where it's appropriate to offer that kind of insight. So I'd suggest we are each Second Amendment activists to some extent. If that's the case, then how do we measure our effectiveness and our resources, our reach as these individual Second Amendment advocates out here? Let's talk about reach. Some traditional strategies to measure effectiveness of a project or a campaign would be to use analytic metrics. So charts and graphs, things with numbers on them to let computers determine if the content is getting reach. That would apply to other projects that are similar, or if you're attaining the same numbers that they'd anticipate. Those techniques do not apply to every project, which often leads to incorrectly interpreted results. These misinterpretations can cause frustration for sure for the creators and those involved, but it can also be used to encourage poor decisions for topics and poor choices for production, spending a lot of extra money or spending a lot of time on things that aren't on topic and aren't creating effort. So analytics and how they work, the high sub counts and the engagement, all that kind of stuff is really a topic for another discussion. So I'm going to suggest some alternative, effective evolution techniques that could help us gauge our effectiveness as Second Amendment content creators and to help us evaluate our tactics and our motives. And they're pretty simple. One, are we reaching ambitious goals? Are we able to learn and teach through our successes and failures? Looking at our peer group, have they been successful? I think as individuals, these are the things that we can use that are harder to gain as metrics, but as a group can be focused on and monitored. Now, in the bigger picture for the Second Amendment, how do we prove or gauge our effectiveness there as individuals when we're talking large scale things? Some ways would be to count our wins on the national, state, and local levels on so many fronts over the last few years, and just as a trend or a tendency since the 90s. Another gauge would be to chart the tactics used by the anti-rights side, and their necessity to adapt to our effective responses to their false narratives. So that's a lot of words, but the way that they react to our successful tactics is a gauge that we can use to monitor how successful, or in this case, how successful or maybe how lack of success we could have had. A more traditional method of measuring effectiveness might be to compare the size of each side of the debate. So we know that Bloomberg is funding with a lot of money, paid positions and setting up internships and incentives for people to work on the other side. And then they, of course, exploit people, victims and families of victims. And aside from that, they get, count the size of their organizations and the number of people that show up compared to the number of people that show up to 2A rallies, or are members of the number of organizations on our side that outnumber the number of organizations on the other side. Now, this might be the role of a national level organization, or this might be a project that an individual or a small group could take up and then offer the results of that to help evolve the debate or help evolve the conversations. Fourth, on this bigger picture, how to monitor our successes or our effectiveness on the bigger picture for the Second Amendment. Fourth would be to see who's involved in 2022 on each side of the debate, when they are involved, and their funding sources. So in addition to measuring their size, let's measure who they are, when they're involved, and the funding sources might be a key to why they're involved. And these are, again, ways that we can evaluate whether or not we're being effective. And I think we are being effective. Now, we're winning on all these fronts. That might be debatable, but I'll take that debate from anybody who wants to have that some other time. I won't take the time here to elaborate on those more than I've already done, but we could have conversations that focus on 2A wins in 2022. Another element to knowing your reach or being effective in your reach is knowing your resources, knowing what you're capable of now, what you might be lacking, what you might be in need of that would be of benefit first, a priority, and who can provide what's missing. Now, with those concepts in mind, are you building projects to find those players or those missing pieces, or do you create projects that work around those voids? Next, let's address realistically the size or how large the reach needs to be. What percent of a group historically creates change? How often is the appeal to the masses what changes the topics of discussion? It is possible to monopolize the narrative or to surf a trend. However, it's much easier to reach and appeal to those who are already capable, who have already had success, who are already activists, other peers. So when we talk about reach and strategies to attain large numbers, I'd suggest an alternative would be considering strategies that would reach specifically other activists, peers, those who are interested in activism. The next element in evaluating your effectiveness, your responsibilities, and your value as a Second Amendment activist in 2022 would be to evaluate the people in your peer group. Having quality people around who are curious, generous, and honest, who inspire you to be the same. Foster the creation of projects, the community building, and the accomplishments of goals that can, by example, offer instruction and inspiration for the next generation or others in, currently who are looking for inspiration and information on how to be a 2A activist. So in conclusion, collaboration is key. Realistic interpretation of our numbers and effective methods of monitoring our reach are probably worth refining. And I guess in conclusion, thanks again to AmmCon for the opportunity to bring these perspectives to the group. And I look forward to any questions or concerns for the rest of the time we have here. If you're watching this as a video on whatever platform it might be, hopefully on guntube.org, gunstreamer.com, .com, or one of the other 2A friendly video hosting platforms out there, or I guess YouTube, then leave us a comment and we'll address those as they come up. I'll leave it with, it's not the numbers, it is who follows your content and what they accomplish. Thank you for being an individual Second Amendment activist in 2022. Thank you for your time. Thank you for supporting our projects. If you'd like to buy us a cup of coffee, check out our Patreon channel.
The guys and gals at gunwebsites.com encourage you to take a CCW class every year, practice at least once a month, and carry every
GearWebsites.com is your source for firearms-based playing cards and books. We also have mugs, shirts, and posters with designs that we've made live. Of course, we have patches. Every Friday is Free Patch Friday. We appreciate your support. Thank you for shopping at GearWebsites.com.